Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to Living in the West. Sheikh Haitham, just before the break, I posed a question, and I think it can summarize the whole issue of this, of eating from Ahl al-Kitab or non-Ahl al-Kitab. Some people go into a lot of difficulty in researching whether a shop is owned by somebody from Ahl al-Kitab or not. How further should we investigate when it comes to our food, especially in the West?
Yeah, as we said, we should not have this as a big issue of dispute. We should identify the reason behind the dispute. And to be honest with you, what we need to tell people, if there is halal, okay, why do you go for the other shops? And here there is a very valid point with those people who say that we are not allowed to eat from any shop owned by the people, owned by non-Muslims, because they said we don't know who works in the slaughtered houses, whether they are from the people of the book, or they are atheists, or maybe Hindus or Sikh. So they have a valid point. We are not quite sure that this meat has been slaughtered and has been slaughtered authentically by the people of the book. Therefore, we should leave this issue of dispute and just eat from the halal meat.
And also, I think it reinforces what you said before, is that if we stick to, like some people I've heard many times say, especially in some of the Western countries, there's so much politics on halal meat, we should stick to kosher meat because we know that's kosher. But the problem here is that they fall back on one of the strategies, which is to put forward halal meat. So even if it means struggling to establish halal meat, to struggle.
And you know, in many Western countries, they have organizations to monitor the halal meat.
HFA and so forth.
Exactly.
Yes.
For example, in the UK, they have HMC, okay, Halal Meat Committee. It monitors whether this meat has been slaughtered according to the conditions. And by the way, they have successfully won this argument about stunning. And now the HMC food or meat has not been stunned. And this goes in line with what we have said before, when we said that the community should build organizations that cater for the Muslims' need, for the individual's need. And those organizations cannot be set up by individual Muslims, but they can set up by the community. And if the community is united, then they will be able to establish more of those organizations that fight for their rights. For example, the issue of halal meat, the issue of Muslim schooling, the issue of women wearing hijab, the issue of discrimination against Muslims in the workplace or in other spheres.
Okay, I think a point that we can make here, at least, especially to our viewers, is that halal meat especially, it's in many of the Western countries, it's really a de facto standard in terms of de facto for as a type of meat. Schools, prisons, hospitals, aeroplanes, wherever you go, halal meat has taken that. That's due to this committee, the community working for this.
Exactly, exactly. And this is really a very good point, Brother Jamil, because what we say, Muslims should not be apologetic. Muslims should leave this defeated mentality. They can achieve really very well in the current setup now, if they come together and if they fight. But imagine if our ancestors, for example, in Britain, we came from Britain, and they have given up this issue of halal meat and they started to eat the other meat. Then this issue of halal will not be recognized, will not be officially recognized. And that's what we said to non-Muslims as well. We told them, do you have a problem with halal meat? They said, no. We said, this is part of Sharia. You don't have a problem with part of Sharia. Why? Because it became de facto, or it became something that is unavoidable. And this is exactly what we want Muslims to work for.
Okay, now there's a point that you touched on, a very controversial point, not controversial, but a very anticipated point. You spoke about marriage here, and you said that, Ahl al-Kitab, we can eat from their meat. Also, we can marry their women. Now, let's look into the issue of marriage, Sheikh. Especially in the West, this is one of the biggest ways of social interaction for the Muslim communities, is marriage like this. Can we start off the discussion? What are the parameters of marriage in a non-Muslim society?
Okay. Before before talking about marriage, would you allow me, Brother Jamil, to speak about an experience about this issue of halal meat and the issue of community?
No, please carry on.
I
Yes.
just remembered this
No,
story.
please do, carry on.
I was talking to a brother who is in charge of one of the Muslim organizations in Britain about this issue of unity among Muslims and this issue of this principle of wala wa bara. And the essence of wala wa bara is that don't side against your Muslim community. Don't, and we, even if we accept that we have so many differences, we should not wash our dirty clothes, okay?
Out in the public, basically.
In the public. And he said, wallahi, this is a very important principle. And he said one time in one of the areas in the Great Britain, it is not in England, he said we were marching for halal food to be the standard food provided by some colleges. And those colleges accepted that because non-Muslims there, they don't have a problem with the halal food if it is according to the regulations and the standard food agency regulations. And he said we were about to finalize that agreement. And in the last meeting we had one Muslim brother joining us from one of the organizations, and he never knew the history of this issue. And all of a sudden when we were sitting, he said, to be honest with you, why do we need to have halal food as a standard menu, in the standard menu? He said, because we as Muslims are allowed to eat from the meat of the people of the book. And he said, look, as if he stabbed us from the back. After all of this that we have gone through, he is coming without understanding the reality, the context. He is coming to what? To side against Muslims in this strategic issue for us, unknowingly or by ignorance. And that's why sometimes we tell some of those people, those scholars who give fatwa for Muslims living in the West, before giving any fatwa, you have to know the reality of what is happening there. There might be some issues regarding politics there in that country. Muslims in that country might be pushing for certain things. They want to achieve it. It is not a matter of this issue, the technicality of this issue, whether it is halal or haram. For example, this issue of eating that meat, it is allowed, as we said, but Muslims are trying to aim for something bigger. So if you go against that, as if you are letting them down. And let me give another example, because this issue is really a very important issue, and it goes with the strategies that Muslim communities can have. You remember the row that took place recently, or maybe 2 years ago, about the niqab.
Issue of niqab.
Covering niqab, and the comments made by Jack Straw, etc. Now, in Britain, a group of scholars came together and they wrote a declaration supporting the issue of niqab. Now, they have not spoken about the obligation of niqab. They haven't spoken about the obligation of niqab. They worded it carefully, and I was one of the signatories on that declaration. We said that the issue of niqab is part of our deen. Some Muslims believe in it. Therefore, we should give them that right.
That freedom as well.
That freedom, to observe that, because that freedom does not go against the public law or does not cause any harm. Or to be more accurate, does not cause any harm for others. Therefore, they should be given that right. Now, many Muslims came together and wrote that declaration, and there was a good outcome because of that declaration. So when Muslims come together and they have a vision in their mind, they will achieve well. After that, we heard certain fatwa from some scholars from some different countries and from some Arab countries. They started to say that niqab is not obligatory, and these fatwa have been translated, and Muslims in the West, because of oppression, because of other circumstances that they are facing, they should give up this issue, or maybe they can consider giving up the issue of niqab, or some of them, even if they leave niqab, then it would be all right. And they have published these fatwas in English, and some people started to circulate these fatwa. Now here, I find it, from a strategic point of view, I found it very difficult to adopt. Why? Because here we are not talking about the permissibility or the obligation of niqab. We are talking about a bigger issue, because the Muslim community in Britain realized that attacking the niqab is attacking the identity, part of the identity of Muslims. And once they can achieve banning Muslims from observing this, then this will be a precedent for banning Muslims from observing other rituals. And that is the key issue here. That's why those who give fatwas to Muslims in the West, they have to be very, very careful in talking about these issues. And we have made a comparison between the situation in France and the situation in Britain. Because France, the Muslims were not coming together to support the issue of hijab as it should be supported. The government could easily ban hijab from being manifested in the public sphere. But in Britain, what has happened is that the Muslims, the government has to think first about the issue of covering the face. And once this issue is banned, then they need to move to the hijab. So the bar is high. So they have to deal with this high bar first before going to the issues below it. While in France, because the bar is not high, they could ban the hijab easily. And that's why we say, once we have strategies, overall strategies, as Muslims living in the West, and these strategies are clear for Muslims elsewhere, we will be achieving well, we will be successful. And as you clearly said, that we can achieve, Muslims in different places achieved very well. So let us leave this defeated mentality and apologetic mindset and take it out, because we can really do very well.
Sheikh Haitham Al Haddad, Jazakallah khair, very poignant point to leave on. That's the end of this episode of Living in the West. Very important topics. So I hope you join me next time. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.